Paul Ticehurst is a geography teacher and an AST for thinking skills. Part of his role is to help other teachers incorporate those skills into their own classes. In this programme, we'll find out why thinking skills are useful, how to implement them, and highlight some of the pitfalls to watch out for.
At the school a couple of years ago now.
We join Paul during an inset session for 6 trainee teachers.
These activities are great fun. And for me as a teacher, yes, of course, I'm interested in all of these things. That's the professional in me. But the mercenary in me is interested in whether I'm having a good time and enjoying what I do. And the fact that these activities are good fun mean that I end up enjoying what I do. And that's what I get from it. I get a real buzz from it. Research indicates that where students have followed thinking skills programs, either within subjects or within schools or whatever, is that achievement is definitely raised. And that has to be one of our aims. It increases students' participation. And again, this is one of the things that I think separates thinking skills from other activities. Every thinking skill, if it's going to work, must have 2 qualities, I think. One, they must encourage conversation and dialogue. So you can forget about having quiet classrooms. You're going to have classrooms that are quite noisy, and that's fine. Secondly, the good thinking skills activities that you set up will have ambiguity in them. A degree of sort of uncertainty in the answer, where the answer is not necessarily clear, and for the students to work out the answer through debate and discussion. And that's absolutely vital. A lot of the activities involve the students giving an opinion, but then justifying it. And as long as they can justify it, they're going to be right. Their opinion or their answer may be different to somebody else's, but as long as they can justify it. And because they can't, in that sense, be wrong, it's going to raise their self-esteem. Teachers ask questions all the time of students, and there is some value in that. I'm not going to sort of denigrate that. And also, we're asking students questions through written activities and all the rest of it. But actually, we've got to get a change of emphasis. We've really got to train students, educate students, to have the skills to ask questions themselves. And this is part of the thrust of what's going on here.
Thinking skills, I think, is about the process of learning how you're learning something, and then being able to apply this to other areas.
Well, thinking skills are being primarily aware of your own cognitive processes. So it's empowering students to think about how they're learning and to improve those skills.
We're going to watch some students in a Year 8 class of mine. What we did was we used an activity in the class which was designed towards getting the students to test 2 things. One, to ask the questions, develop their questioning skills, and secondly, to encourage their visualisation skills. So what happened was that in the class, one student in each pair, they were put in pairs, one student in each pair was given the photograph. The student who didn't have the photograph, what they had to do was fire questions in the dark, and they had to build up a picture of this. The only condition was that the students who had the photograph could only answer to questions by saying yes and no.
Is there any scenery in it? Are there people waiting for something? Do you know?
Is the population big?
Massive. There must be over 3,000 people. There are lots of refugees by the looks of things.
Have they gathered on the purpose of something tragic?
Yeah.
Would you like to live there?
No, I wouldn't. It looks as if it's very dry and...
Right, you might want to know whether they're rich or poor. Have you established that yet from the picture? Do you know whether it's a rich... OK, so that's something you could ask, so bear that in mind. What else do you want to know about the people?
There's lots of people. They're all helping each other out. They're at rest.
Think of any group of people anywhere in the world. What do you want to know about these people more than anything? And what else do you want to know? Who they are and where they're from and what they're doing. Do you not want to know what the people are doing? You don't want to. Can I suggest maybe you do want to know what they're doing? I think you've got to find out what the people are doing in the picture, because that will give you a lot of other information that you can get. One point I will make is if you're going to have a debrief with the students at the end of it to talk about the strategy and the activity, what's your involvement going to be? What should your involvement be while they're doing the activity?
Suggesting ways of asking questions and suggesting what questions might help them to progress.
So prompting them?
Yeah, prompting.
Like I was doing?
Yeah.
Did you see how I was prompting? I just find that quite interesting when you watch yourself on there. I was saying, what was it I was saying? What question would you like to ask? I don't know, I've got a clue. What question would you like to... I've got a clue. And I was going to this sort of typical teacher thing. I know what answer I want you to give me, and I'm asking a not very good question because you haven't got a clue where I'm coming from. And to me, I thought it was obvious that you'd want to know what people were doing. You know, if you know there are people, you'd want to know what they were doing. But it wasn't obvious to her. And even when I suggested that's what she wanted to know, she denied it. She said, no, I don't want to know that, which was fair enough, really. I have to say that with thinking skills, the advice is that you don't actually get involved. And in a sense, what do I do there? These girls, I thought, come to a bit of an impasse and they come to a block. And I became involved because that's what teachers do. But actually, all the advice is that you don't. What you do is you go around and listen. But consider what sort of help we often give anyway. Quite often it's, here's the answer and I'll move on over there. But try it. Try and keep not getting involved, making notes. And then quoting back to the students. When you do your debrief, students quite like it if you can quote back things they've said. You know, Mike said this sort of thing, and Mike's little face will light up and he'll be quite pleased that I've actually listened to what he said. He's doing it now, even though I haven't done it. Okay? Anything else? Anything else on there? There was I know Mike and Christina, you picked up on this. I heard you made a comment when it was on. It was the two boys.
Yeah, they're perhaps sort of going a bit outside of how you described the task, and that he wanted to almost help the other person along. And I think by doing that as well, the other person was picking up on the sequence of questions, of where it was going. And he was trying to still say questions that were closed questions. So the person asking questions was entirely following the activity, but the person answering them wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. The one lad was sort of, he'd ask a question, a lad would give him the answer, and other information. Would you like to live there? No, I wouldn't, it's too dry, and so on. I don't think, there's not a problem with that. You know, they picked up a picture on it.
In the video, it obviously went pretty well. I think perhaps in a real class, you might come across a slightly rowdier situation. Perhaps relax and allow for more noise levels.
I've always tried to put open questions in the preliminaries, but I think I perhaps still steered people within the open questions, whereas I haven't fully allowed this just free-rein discussion perhaps as much as I should have done.
You'd have to be confident in your class control, but I think that actually it makes an easier lesson for you, and yeah, just a more diverse lesson. I think you learn more from it, from a lesson like that, than if you stood at the front dictating the whole class.
I'm going to ask you in a minute, I'm to do this in sort of stages. First of all, I want each pair to choose a topic of conversation. It frankly doesn't matter what it is, and it can be the first thing that comes into your head. It can be fashion, it can be sport, it might be what you're doing tonight. I don't care.
Christmas.
Christmas. Brilliant. Christmas over here.
Primary schools.
Primary schools over here.
I'm going to be working on lesson plans for tomorrow.
And you're going to talk about that?
From my observation, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
One rule, you can't ask any questions.
I think really Christmas this year, at the time, it's kind of been overshadowed by that almost. It's not been as positive as a normal Christmas would have been, really.
Yeah.
Always thinking about other people and stuff that's hard to not feel a little bit sort of guilty about how fed up. Especially by the time it got through to New Year and stuff, you didn't really want to go out because of it.
Yeah. At least you get to know the kids quite well.
That's true.
Yeah, with them all year round as well.
I don't know, switching from task to task, I don't know how they keep the students involved though.
Any comments?
It's absolutely impossible to engage in a conversation where you don't ask a question. I even made a statement and then I realised that the intonation of my voice had suggested a question.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and yet we have classroom situations where we very often deny that opportunity to students. You know, quite often we say, don't talk. Actually listen to what they're talking about anyway, and they're asking questions, invariably about the work.
I thought I'd used thinking skills to a good effect before, but having seen this presentation, I think there's definitely now a lot more thinking skills I can include in my lessons.
Well, I teach geography, and I think also I've tried to involve thinking skills, but perhaps not to the same extent that Paul has shown. Some of the activities I think definitely try and include in the classes, but guilty of asking closed questions all the time, definitely directing the questions, and also stopping pupils when perhaps they are on task and accusing them of being off task, and allowing them to sort of direct the conversation themselves and the learning themselves.
We're going to watch a bit of footage of students finishing a mind movie and of me then having a discussion with them about it. Now, mind movie, how it works is that you get the students relaxed, calm, What I do is I read a passage to them, and it has to be a fairly descriptive passage, one that's got lots of good descriptive scenes in. They are a director of a film, and they've gone to the cinema or television studio or whatever, and they're watching the film that they've directed for the first time. And as I read the passage out to them, they have to visualise the scenes. What we will see here is the end of it, me just finishing the reading of it, them waking up, and it is, you know, start stretching and everything, which is okay. And then we go into a sort of a discussion about it. Are you clear on what it is they're doing? And then sort of, this is difficult. The plenary, the discussion with the students, is the hardest thing of all.
Until the evening when we queue again for our next meal.
Each day is the same. Each day is very hard, and each day is incredibly boring. Lots of people just stand around with grey, ashen faces.
Many are beginning to give up hope. Now, don't open your eyes yet.
Just keep your eyes closed and imagine the film rolling on for a little bit. Just imagine the following scenes for about a minute. Somebody like to tell me something, the most powerful, what is the most powerful image in there? What's the thing that really you think you will remember?
Not being sure that they'll ever have anything to go back to, and their houses have been destroyed.
At the end of when you were telling the story, it's like their refugee camps, the tents that they had to sleep in, and just having a bucket of water.
Shall we perhaps discuss the issue of the plenary? Put yourselves in my position. You're in front of the class and you're going to ask questions about them. What sort of things are you going to want to know?
You could ask them what methods they have for remembering things. They might have developed their own techniques already.
Brilliant. Have you got it? What are yours?
My memory's not as good as it could be, actually. I could do with a few tips.
Being an artist, mine's visual. I always think images in my mind, even with numbers and words and everything. I just picture it as visual images.
I think it'll be very important in my teaching to be aware of thinking skills, because it will enable me to plan lessons that will build in opportunities to develop those skills for students. And also, if students can develop strategies to remember what I've taught them, then obviously that's of benefit to us all.
I think perhaps some of the thinking skills lessons have also worked well because the pupils aren't used to those sort of lessons and they've responded because it's been something different and they've enjoyed. I think sometimes if you were to do thinking skills lessons all the time, it would perhaps get more like a sort of just a conversation rather than a lesson.
The more experienced the teacher, the better they are at questioning students. And the more time they give students to talk, the less they feel they need to hold the floor. And as a trainee, that's quite a scary thing to do, to give power over to the children.
Definitely from planning lessons like this, it's clearly obvious that it takes a lot longer. But like Paul said as well, you don't need to make it every lesson. That's not the point. The point is to intersperse it between your standard lessons.
I think probably planning a lesson like this would have to be a lot less rigid as well. You'd have to actually plan it in a flexible manner so that you could perhaps adjust activities, speed things up, slow things down, see which way the pupils want to lead it, and if it looks relevant, then go with that.
So obviously it's really great for one, for ideas, and two, to see them in practice. And also when you're seeing them in practice, you're seeing perhaps some of the problems that might occur.
If you're allowing students to talk between themselves, there's the danger that they're going to go off task. But actually what I'm beginning to realise is that that isn't actually necessarily true in most cases. You go over to a group of students who are laughing and think, haha, they're not paying attention, they're not doing what I've asked them to do. But really they're just enjoying the task, and really isn't that part of the experience? Shouldn't they be allowed to enjoy it?